Topping, SMSL, Drop, Monolith, Bear Dynamic, Aslin Kern, Sony, Audio-Technica, Hi-Fi Man, Sennheiser, all of these companies and many others have amplifiers and DACs to sell to you. One thing becomes fairly clear early on. Sound differences and overall design aside, every single amp DAC from these companies has the same features. You can plop down $800 for an Aslin Kern L1000 or $1,000 for the Sennheiser HDVD 820 or the $400 for the Drop 789, but the basic functionality is the same. Matrix Audio, however, recently released their newest amp DAC called the Mini i3 and the Mini i Pro 3. As you might imagine, these are sequel iterations to the Mini i product line. The Pro 3 is an amplifier and DAC and a music streamer. This device has fluctuated a little in price over the last few months. Upon initial release, it was around $900. Now, the Pro 3 sells for just over $1,000. You can buy the Pro 3 at Apple's Audio and other select retailers. Is the Matrix Mini i Pro 3 a jack of all trades or a pretender to the amp DAC throne? This review is strictly about the Pro 3. The base model, the Mini i3, is a few $100s cheaper. I don't have that device, but I will point out the differences in specifications at the end of this section. The Pro 3 is feature-packed. It renders all high-resolution audio up to 32-bit PCM. It decodes DSD512. It supports MQA. It is Roon-ready. It supports Apple AirPlay. It functions as a DAC for an external amp, either through balanced XLR or RCA. The Pro has quarter-inch and balanced 4.4mm output for your headphones. The Pro 3's connectivity is rather impressive. It has Wi-Fi and Bluetooth along with the standard LAN connection. The Pro 3 supports SBC, AAC, aptX, aptX HD, and LDAC. You can also connect to your source using USB, optical, coaxial, or a low-voltage form of I2S, which is a serial bus interface. Of course, we cannot forget the full-color LCD screen on the front. This screen is not touch-capable, and all navigation is done through the volume knob, which does click as well. There are a few differences in features between the base price Mini i3 and the Pro 3. The Pro has a Chrystek clock oscillator, while the standard Mini i3 has one from SiTime. The Pro also decodes MQA and the standard device does not. Finally, the Pro has Wi-Fi connectivity and the standard Mini i3 doesn't. In all other respects, the two devices have identical functionality. Regarding the build of the Pro 3, well, let's just say it is impeccable. The screen is bright and the user interface takes full advantage of the size. The entire casing is metal. The unit is not necessarily heavy, but does have weight to it. Thus, plugging and unplugging headphones should not result in the Pro 3 shifting around. There are vents on the sides of the device. It does tend to get a bit hot, like most desktop amplifiers. Consequently, avoid blocking those air vents. The Mini i devices come with a sturdy remote. It is made of metal, has simple functionality, and seems designed to match the Mini i. This is not some off-the-shelf plastic remote that Topping and SMSL use, nor the generic Apple remote that Bear Dynamic and Mytek use. Overall, the features and build for the Pro 3 are quite plentiful. The build is robust, elegant, and, I would say, premium. However, there are a few shortcomings. For example, a touchscreen interface would have been appreciated. At this price level, the lack of a touchscreen seems a bit dated. On the other hand, I also realize that wear and tear on a screen and the potential cost of replacing faulty or damaged screens would be fairly expensive. I think it would make a lot of sense to allow SSD or hard drive connection directly to the Mini i. I wish there was an option for this inside the DAC amp to read through a music library on an SD card or a hard drive, then use the visual interface to select the music. However, no such capability is on the Pro 3 or the standard Mini i3. A minor caveat, one which I have not spoken of before in any of my reviews, is the Mini i's short power cable. It's about 3 feet, which I feel is not long enough for some setups, particularly mine. However, the Mini-I uses a standard IEC cable, which are fairly cheap and easily found on Amazon. These small issues aside, the Pro 3 is a robust device with an eye-catching design. I do want to make one thing clear right now. In this video, I will not discuss Roon in any detail. I will not talk about the integration between Roon and the Pro 3. Instead, I will leave that issue for a subsequent video, which should be available in the next 2 weeks. I have the original Mini-I DAC from 2009. I was lucky enough to find one on eBay over 1 year ago, and I was eager to take possession of it. If you're interested in knowing a bit about Matrix Audio and their heritage, you may want to read a bit about the original Mini-I. Regardless, the original Mini-I uses the Analog Devices AD1955 DAC, which is impossible to find in modern products. The original Mini-I has a slightly warm and rather smooth presentation. The new Pro 3 uses the Sabre ES9038Q2M, and only one of them. This DAC chip is used in many modern devices, including the Earman TR amp, Topping D50S, Topping NX4, and the Cadus Tone board. Clearly, the Pro 3 does not use some exotic DAC chip, which is, I think, a good thing. The 9038Q2M is a stable chip and can be tuned to provide either a neutral or slightly analytical sound, depending on the product. To test the sound signature of the Pro 3, I plugged it into my Windows 10 PC over USB. I used my Avantone planar. I had those headphones plugged into the 4.4mm balanced output. I also tested using the Allo Audio S4X through the 1/4 inch connection. I played music through Amazon Music HD. Both the planar and the S4X are neutral headphones with some caveats. The planar, for example, has a slight sub-bass roll-off but is otherwise neutral across the board. The S4X has a slight emphasis in female sibilants and a marginal treble push, but is otherwise neutral. If the Mini-I Pro 3 adds noticeable coloration, it should be apparent with one or both of these headphones. As far as the Pro 3 goes, the ES9038Q2M in this product is tuned to be neutral. This sound signature is a noticeable departure from the original Mini-I and is also immediately different from what I hear on the TR amp. The bass on the Pro 3 is neutral. Sub-bass is not elevated and sounds clear. In Mountains by Hans Zimmer, the Pro 3 did not accentuate or de-emphasize the rumble throughout the track. On the planar, the rumble was a bit muted, and on the S4X, that detail was clear and obvious without bloat. This is how both headphones perform with other neutral sources. Mid-bass impact is hard, clear, and uncolored. Listening to Conquer, Irodori, Pure Water, New Patek, Reel It In, and various movie soundtracks, the experience was consistent. The Pro 3 does not color mid-bass presentation. Drums sound precise with natural decay. There is good separation between sub-bass and mid-bass. Multiple drums sound clear and distinct and have the energy behind strikes. The mids are also uncolored by the Pro 3. In Why Am I Like This by Orla Gartland, there is natural grain and female sibilants recorded into the track. On the planar, both details were present without alteration. On the S4X, the sibilance is slightly accentuated. This was precisely how both headphones performed on the Pro 3 and on other neutral sources such as the RME ADI2 DAC. I listened to Want You Back by Haim and had a similar experience. Both headphones provided their characteristic presentation of sibilance. That is, the planar was neutral and the S4X had a slight emphasis. With both headphones, the Pro 3 had natural timbre for all instruments. Vocals were always clear. Multiple vocalists were easily audible depending on the track and the headphones used, of course. Treble, again, is neutral. I listened to Scherzo for X-Wings, Flight from the City, Take 5, and numerous orchestral and classical pieces. On every occasion, the Pro 3 presented clear, precise treble instruments. Horns and brass retained their nasally signatures. Saxophones were undistorted and pierced through accompanying instruments. Pianos sounded natural, cellos were smooth. I never heard a harsh or piercing instrument even at high volumes. The Pro 3 is also perfectly normal and neutral in detail retrieval. I think there are 3 types of sources. First, sources that muddy or veil the sound to hide details. Second, sources that provide a more analytical sound to present some additional clarity for details. And third, sources that present a neutral sound that do not cloud or emphasize a particular frequency where some additional details might be present. The first type, the one dealing with veiled sound, does have a few examples. The Chord Mojo, the Jolita Glass FX DAC, the Sony NWA55, and the AudioQuest Dragonfly Red are a few notable products. These sources have warmer sound signatures, and some products, such as the Mojo and Dragonfly Red, obscure micro details and sometimes make obvious details a bit veiled. The second type, the one with analytical sound, includes the Earman TR amp, the Monolith THX Desktop, and the Monolith THX Portable. All three have a slight decrease in bass presentation, mostly in sub-bass, and a slight push in treble. This provides a bit more clarity in some instances where treble detail might be marginally more obvious or mids might be a bit leaner, resulting in a few extra micro details standing out. The third type, the one with neutral sound, includes the RME ADI2, the Topping NX4, JDS Element, and Shit Modi. None of these devices could be called warm or analytical, yet they present what I and many others would consider natural detail retrieval. I think the Pro 3 lives in this category. Overall, the Pro 3 is as neutral as the RME ADI2, Topping NX4, and other devices I have mentioned. There are, of course, slight variances here and there, as you might expect from different companies using different DACs with different tuning. So, while I cannot say there is necessarily a perfect measure of neutrality, we can at least get to a reasonable approximation. In that view, the Pro 3 is reasonably neutral, and in my book that means it is neutral. When you take away the extreme options, warm sound and analytical sound, then the middle ground is left. And that middle ground leaves plenty of room for slight variations. The short version is this: the Pro 3 will not noticeably color the sound. The Pro 3 and the stock Mini i3 have the same power output. Through the single-ended, they provide just short of 1.3 watts into 33 ohms, 257 milliwatts into 300 ohms, and 133 milliwatts into 600 ohms. Through balanced, the devices provide 1.9 watts into 33 ohms, 950 milliwatts into 300 ohms, and 510 milliwatts into 600 ohms. Compared to the similarly priced RME ADI2 DAC, RME says that their product has a maximum output of 1.5 watts, but details about load are missing. AudioScience Review measured the power output. They found 1.5 watts into 33 ohms and 310 milliwatts into 300 ohms. Compared to lower-priced amps like the Drop 789, Monolith 887, and many other options, the RME and Pro 3 seem like children's toys. But, as we have come to find over and over again, it is rare to find a headphone that needs the type of power that the 789 or 887 provide. There should be no doubt that the Pro 3 can easily drive the vast majority of headphones. The Pro 3's lowest volume setting is negative 107 decibels. This is mute. The unit maxes out at plus 18 decibels. The Pro 3 adjusts volumes in 0.5 decibel steps once you get to the negative 31 decibel point. Using the Allo S4X, which is a 32 ohm headphone, I could hear audio at negative 77 decibels. At negative 46 decibels, the S4X became comfortably loud. At negative 30 decibels, it was at the threshold of safe listening volumes. On the Avantone Planar, connected over single-ended, I heard music at negative 62 decibels. I achieved comfortable volume around negative 38 decibels, and I was at maximum safe listening at negative 15 decibels. Using balanced, I heard music at negative 66 decibels. I got comfortable volume at negative 45 decibels. I was at maximum safe volume at negative 20 decibels. I switched to the Sennheiser HD6XX over single-ended. I heard audible sound at negative 67 decibels. The 6XX was at comfortable volume at negative 30 decibels. It was at maximum safe volume at negative 18.5 decibels. Using the Modhouse Argon over single-ended, I heard music at negative 57 decibels. I achieved comfortable volume at negative 14 decibels, and I got maximum safe volume at negative 5 decibels. I believe that the Argon performed close to their optimum on the Pro 3, However, more power would have provided slightly tighter bass impact and more treble clarity. This is the nature of the Argon, which is a notoriously power-hungry headphone and one which is hardly a normal candidate among headphones. I also use my Beyerdynamic T1 2nd Gen. On single-ended, I heard music at negative 62 decibels. I got comfortable volume at negative 14.5 decibels, and I achieved maximum safe volume at negative 5 decibels. With balanced connection, the T1 produced audible sound at negative 66 decibels. I achieved comfortable volume at negative 20 decibels. I was at maximum safe volume at negative 10 decibels. These tests demonstrate that the Pro 3 is more than capable of handling even demanding headphones like the Argon and the T1. I believe you can eke out more performance from the Argon with a more powerful amplifier, but not by a significant amount. Rest assured, if you have a large planar magnetic headphone or one of those pricey Focal Stellias or Utopias or the Klipsch Heritage HP3 or a Sennheiser headphone, the Pro 3 will easily handle their power requirements. Selecting Bluetooth is very easy. Click the volume button once and you're greeted by the input and output selection menu. Scroll to the Bluetooth option and then click again. Or, in the alternative, you can push the Bluetooth button on the remote. The Pro 3 will now be in Bluetooth pairing mode. Go to your Bluetooth source device, a phone, computer, or DAP, and select the Mini I Pro 3 signal. Now you're connected. Play music as you wish. There is no reason to belabor the point. Bluetooth connection is as standard on the Pro 3 as on any other Bluetooth receiver. You should make sure that the Pro 3 is not obstructed. Adding walls or shelves between the Pro 3 and your Bluetooth source will cause connection dropouts. On your source device, you may be able to select Bluetooth codecs. On Android, this is possible, but not on iOS devices. Consequently, if you want to take advantage of LDAC, make sure you select the highest quality audio from the Android Bluetooth menu. If your DAP has the same capability, do likewise. You should read through Matrix Audio's fairly straightforward manual, but here we will briefly go over the menu options. As I said in the previous section, pushing the volume button once will bring up the source input and output options. Use the volume dial to highlight a source and then press again to use it. This applies to the line out function as well. You have many other options, but they are not available from the front panel directly. Instead, Matrix put a settings button on the back next to the power socket. It's a very small button, and I think it is really odd that they put it there. Anyway, push that button once, and your front panel will go into the settings menu. Here, you have some extra settings to play with. Each option is selectable using the volume button by scrolling and pressing. First, you have the DAC filter option. This is available on the remote as well. You can go into the line output mode to decide if you want fixed or variable voltage. Line in gain will allow you to choose between 0 decibel, negative 6 decibel, and plus 6 decibel. The menu will tell you when each might be useful. For example, the menu says to select plus 6 decibel when connected as a computer sound card. Line input detection will allow you to force the Pro 3 to mute when it detects a signal lower than 70 decibels. PLL will let you select bandwidth for optical, coaxial, and LVDS for signal stability. Bluetooth will let you disconnect from a currently connected device or just unpair from a previously connected device. IIS-config lets you choose between configurations on the various LVDS connection options. This, I must confess, is something I have never dealt with and do not have any familiarity with. Hearing protection is off by default. You can select to have both headphone and line output protection active, whereby you have to confirm to go beyond safe volumes. The remote menu evidently lets you have up to 5 remote addresses. This is theoretically to prevent another remote from using the same frequency. Background lets you select from a handful of wallpaper options for the menu. As far as I know, you cannot insert or upload your own wallpaper. Network lets you select between LAN and Wi-Fi. When Wi-Fi is selected, you are taken to a Wi-Fi signal selection submenu to select and then enter a password for your specific Wi-Fi signal. Language, info, brightness, load default, and firmware update are all fairly self-explanatory. Language lets you select your preferred language. Info will provide data about your current firmware and other device ID. Brightness lets you adjust the screen brightness. Load default will revert settings to factory, except the firmware. And firmware update will let you scan for and update firmware over the air when Wi-Fi or LAN connection is established. A weird aspect I found is that the Pro 3 does not revert to the stock firmware when you do a factory reset. This may be an issue if you want to test new firmware but want to downgrade later. So far, we have had a fairly rosy picture of the Pro 3, and for good reason. However, while I have been experimenting with this device, I have found 3 issues. First, the USB-C port on the back should be handled with care. While testing the settings, I had to repeatedly press the settings button. I kept accidentally touching the USB cable, which caused the Pro 3 to disconnect from my computer. I eventually figured out that a slight tap on the USB cable portion where it is physically connected to the Pro 3 will be enough to disconnect the device. Once I realized this, I was more careful and mindful of how I pressed the settings button and did not have the same problem again. The second issue is with the Matrix ASIO driver, and this is a much bigger problem. When I initially started testing the Pro 3, I simply plugged it into a Windows 10 laptop and the Pro 3 automatically installed the driver. I had no problems using System Audio, Chrome, or Amazon Music HD. Preparing for this review, I decided to use my desktop PC as my testbed. I downloaded the latest driver from the Matrix Audio website. The update notes said that the driver provided ASIO compatibility with Windows 10. I installed that driver, made sure that the Pro 3 had updated firmware, and then connected the Pro 3 to my desktop. And this is where all hell broke loose. Windows kept telling me that the Pro 3 was an incompatible device. I tried different USB ports and they worked briefly, then stopped connecting to the Pro 3. I tried to troubleshoot by uninstalling other audio drivers. I restarted my computer. I reinstalled the Matrix driver. Unfortunately, the problem persisted. I was about to do a fresh reinstall of Windows 10 when Windows indicated the applications it would uninstall during this procedure. And then I realized that the Matrix driver was installed as an application. I then altered my plan and uninstalled the Matrix driver using the Windows Add Remove menu. I restarted my computer. I reconnected my Pro 3, and this time the Pro 3 installed the driver as it had on my laptop. This finally resulted in stable, constant connection with my desktop. I have no idea what the problem is. I have no idea if the Matrix ASIO driver is faulty or if some other drivers on my desktop are causing incompatibility. However, this caused me significant frustration as I tried to rule out potential factors. Perhaps the Matrix driver will work fine with your device, but if it does not, you can uninstall it. As for Mac, well, they have always been plug and play. It's the same here. You don't need to download a driver, and there frankly isn't one from Matrix Audio for the Mac. The final issue is a fairly silly one, but here it is. The menu selections disappear within a few seconds. If you're in the settings or input selection menus and you're not able to make a decision within 10 seconds, the menu will revert to the standard view. You might be wondering why I have not spoken about the Pro 3's AirPlay and Roon compatibility. The reason is because those features will be discussed in a follow-up video. I think it is worth spending additional time separate from this video discussing AirPlay and Roon. You may also wonder why I have not tested the Pro 3 with MQA through Tidal. Well, I have already tested Tidal in MQA and spent money on that platform. I am not a fan of MQA, and I believe it is a service with quickly diminishing returns. I am not inclined to spend more money on Tidal just to talk about the fact that the Pro 3 is MQA compatible. With that out of the way, let's concentrate on the noteworthy aspects of the Pro 3. All of these aspects of the Pro 3 are fundamentally functional and probably on par with similarly priced alternatives. The Pro 3 has excellent build. There are no physical faults that I can find. The device works without obvious issues. Indeed, even the included remote is well built and suited to the Pro 3. The sound signature is neutral. If that is the type of sound you are seeking, then the Pro 3 will be a good addition for your setup. The amplification is perfectly agreeable for the vast majority of headphones currently available. This includes headphones up to 600 ohms and even the power-hungry Mod House Argon. The Pro 3 has a robust selection of connectivity. The wireless options aside, the Pro 3 has USB, optical, coaxial, LAN, LVDS, and XLR and RCA output. Not many DACs on the market offer all of these physical connectivity, to say nothing of the Bluetooth, AirPlay, and Roon compatibility that is also included. The features we have covered in this video are nothing groundbreaking. For example, the Pro 3 does not provide a mind-boggling amount of headphone power output. The Pro 3 does not have a unique high-resolution audio upscaler. The Pro 3 does not have an abundance of accessories included with the packaging. But I think you can find excellence when a product does many things and all of them competently. This brings us to value. If you are not interested in AirPlay or Roon, then the Pro 3 is an attractive device that does do a lot and does all of it perfectly well. The Pro 3 is not the same as the RME80i2 DAC. The devices simply do not compete with each other. They have vastly different feature sets, so other than the comparable price tags and overall size, the RME and Pro 3 are not related in the slightest. So put that comparison out of your mind. The Pro 3 does not have built-in EQ functionality or the ability to closely monitor your music. This is not a studio amp DAC. I would be surprised if professionals used this device as their go-to kit for production. Instead, the Pro 3's strength is that it is among a very select group of devices that could be the hub for your home system. It has plenty of power for your headphones. It will connect to your powered speakers. You can use a separate amplifier if you decide you need to drive passive speakers or more difficult to drive headphones. You don't need to keep the Pro 3 next to your computer either. You can put it into your living room and stream music over your phone or DAP. Have it connected to your TV or game console, or put it on your desk in the office or your nightstand at your bedside. And, as silly as it sounds, you can unplug this device and take it from one place or another because of its diminutive size and easy connectivity. There are a few things, however, I am a bit disappointed by. First, I do not understand why Matrix ignored EQ capability. Even a simple 10-band EQ would be sufficient. I assume that with a firmware update this could be implemented, but it has not been so far. I hope that Matrix catches on and realizes that this simple feature only makes a stronger argument for this product. Second, I'm a bit surprised that the Pro 3 does not have the ability to read SSDs or hard drives. If you're not inclined to stream music, then you should at least have the option to plug in a drive and have the Pro 3 read the music off of it. And if for some reason SSDs and hard drive implementation was not possible, then an SD card slot would have been a good addition. Indeed, QLS did that with their QA390. Finally, I think it was a poor choice for Matrix to include such a short power cable. Look, I know this is a very minor gripe, but one worth making. If you're going to use this device as a living room hub, then you should have a longer cable. This is rectified by buying a longer IEC cable or using an extension cord, but I think Matrix made a strange decision nonetheless. In the grand scheme, all but one of these gripes is nitpicking. I think SSD, hard drive, or SD card compatibility is a must, especially at this price range. However, I think the Pro 3 does make a very compelling argument as a standalone amp DAC with streaming capacity. I hate using the term endgame because it is a silly concept. There is no such thing as endgame because eventually you will find something else to focus on. Instead, I will suggest you think of the Pro 3 as a digital hub. If you want all the connectivity this device has, then I think you will be hard-pressed to find alternatives. Yes, there are more powerful amplifiers for much cheaper. Yes, there are DACs with multiple DAC chips. Yes, there are Bluetooth adapters you can plug into cheaper DACs and amps. Yes, you can happily live with a shit stack. And obviously, by paying marginally more, you could buy the RME80i2, which is another level of audiophile equipment. But the question here, when the price tag is well above $1,000, is not can you live with a cheaper device, but instead, do you want luxury features? As a luxury item, the Pro 3 justifies its price tag. If money is not really an issue for you, then the Pro 3 may fit quite well into your audiophile world. But if money is an issue, and it is for a lot of people, then you really have to think about what you want, need, and can live without. To that end, I would say that the Pro 3 is value, but only for those who know what they want. Concurrently, the Pro 3 is not value for those who are still uncertain about their audiophile dreams, and it most certainly is nothing more than eye candy for those who need a simple desktop solution for PC connection. In short, if you do not need or want a neutral DAC amp with respectable power output and one which is a music hub for your home, then save your money. But those who do want a digital music hub, the Pro 3 is a faultless device worth your consideration.